Hello, stranger. You're muted.
Oh, and I don't have lipstick on because I'm not used to it.
You're live on YouTube, so whatever you're saying, we're streaming live already. It's big professional.
Have we started though?
We're starting in. I'm waiting for your co.
Do I have time to make my coffee?
Yes, yes. Quick. Aisha, you're muted.
Hi.
You yourself and your video. So I'm going to, since you're moderating this session, I'm going to what's the word now? I'm going to make you the co-host so you can, yeah.
It's 9:30.
We're waiting. So Tolagbe is here. Tolagbe,
Morning, Cheryl.
Hey, morning.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
We're just waiting for the
Looking
man.
forward to this session.
Yeah, it's funny because Erefa, at first I was like, what are we talking about? But then as we had the like little pre-brainstorming session, I realized there was actually so much to unpack.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack.
So Cheryl, your co-host.
Great.
Akin is here. And we need so
Oh.
we need one more panelist. Akin say hello, Akin. You're muted, Aki. We can't hear you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good.
We're just waiting for the last keynote panelists. And we're also streaming live on YouTube. So
right now?
Right now, yeah.
So I'm going to be careful what I say.
You better be. And here it comes.
I would have put my YouTube on. Let me just go and do that so I can see it in the background.
Hi, Mark. Mark's joined us. And that's, Black Lives Matter. Interesting.
What they do?
Good morning, Mark.
Can you send me the YouTube link, Erefa?
I will do.
Okay.
So, oh, Cheryl, did I take co-host? So I'm making all the speakers co-host, okay? Cheryl, happy to start when you want to start. I'm going to start recording the video now. So, introductions, Mark's here, Akin's here.
Let me just come back to my screen. Okay, let's just have a name check on everyone who's here. Oh, let me put it into gallery view. That's better. Okay.
So I'm starting the recording now. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, good morning all. Good morning panel, esteemed speakers. My name's Cheryl Mwosu and I will be moderating this panel, which is on the topic of race and ethnicity in the current workplace, new perspectives on diversity. Can I first of all ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves to our viewers? So taking it in turn, Tolagbe.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Tolagbe Martins, and I work in consulting on business processes and innovation.
Thank you.
Is it me next? Okay, so good morning. I'm Acton Thomas, and I'm the CEO of an organization called AKD Solutions, and we're an international learning and development consultancy.
Great.
I'll go next. My name is Mac. I run an organization called the Equal Group. Essentially, we use data and technology to help organizations make measurable improvements in terms of diversity and inclusion.
And Cheryl?
Okay. So, first of all, can I just intro the subject? So as I said, we're going to be talking about race and ethnicity in the current workplace, new perspectives on diversity. And at first blush, it may seem interesting and perhaps unusual to be considering, firstly, the issue of race, where this is perhaps a predominantly Nigerian turnout. So people who live and work in Nigeria, for whom some may think race is not an issue. But immediately to break down that, that position or that supposition, one has to move very quickly to considering that we work in a global universe, so that things that happen in the UK affect things that happen in America. Things that happen in America affect things that happen in China. And it may be said quite easily, therefore, that things that happen in Nigeria and things that happen to Black people who may or may not originate from Nigeria affect the rest of the world. Certainly, things that happen to the African diaspora all over the world must be said to be relevant in this new global universe. And so, having opened the subject in that way, what would be the opening remarks from each of you? And I'll go in this order, Tolagbe, Akin, and Mac, as to what that subject says to you and why it has specific relevance now.
Okay, so we're starting with me, and I think I find the initial supposition that people would feel that race didn't have anything to do with such a overall homogeneous society. But I think it's impossible to divorce that from the historical context, specifically if we're getting to Nigeria. But let's start with the very basics of Africa being divvied up into Anglophone and Francophone Africa. That in and of itself speaks to the legacies that we're battling and the biases that have led to our workforce, our culture. The names of our streets even, so it's inescapable, and it's ever present. Technology has what technology has done is it has aligned communities across geographic boundaries such that you can identify this issue, much more readily. So you're more aware of its presence, information is more available. One of our biggest cities, and incidentally, one of the most underdeveloped and the most damaged by the extractive and exploitative legacies that we're dealing with, Port Harcourt, is named after a famous colonial master who turned out to be a pedophile. So every day where this thing is doing, as we say in Nigeria, this thing is doing biz baz boost. It's here, it's everywhere.
Would you like to step in on that? What's your take on it?
I think I'm just trying to find a way of saying it succinctly, and this is something which I've heard, which is this: if you're not invited to the table, you're on the menu.
Absolutely.
And I think that the reality is this: on a global stage, Nigeria is on the menu, and we have to recognize that, and we have to, if we don't recognize that, if we don't acknowledge it, so if we're insular in terms of our thinking, we're thinking that we're players, we're victims of a system that we're ignorant of. And I think that by acknowledging race and racism, we therefore position ourselves better to react to it, to look at what are our strategies, yeah, that we must employ as a group of people to challenge, to overcome, to go around, to develop systems which are independent, to ensure that we, you know, the reality is people don't give away power. You have to take it. You have to take back what's yours. Yeah. And if you're ignorant, you will walk around thinking you're okay, but actually you're not. So I think that's my initial force.
Yeah, and I think for me, just echoing what the guys have said, you know, we have to be conscious of the geopolitical landscape in which we operate. I think race plays into absolutely everything. Obviously, the division of Africa into segments, if you like, or into countries, was largely because we were viewed as less than, viewed as an inferior race that would be able to subjugate rather than being seen as co-equals. And I think once you're in that frame of mind, obviously these things, these ideologies have now been systemized, have now been embedded into legislation. You know, the same reason that we see things occurring in America with people being killed by police is exactly the same ideologies that lead to the rape and pillage of Africa that's ongoing. And if we're not aware of that, we will be unable or unequipped to fight against it in terms of ensuring that the legacy of colonialism doesn't continue to be of detriment to us.
Okay. All of you have actually spoken quite interestingly, and perhaps it's because we're at the beginning, from a historical perspective. And that's quite right to do so, because that's where the issue starts. But having considered now and having discussed the historical perspective as to, as Max said, why we were treated as less than, as Tolagbe has introed, why race and the issue of racism still affects us in the workplace. What is your take really on those real and tangible ways that racism does affect Black people, African descended people within workplaces currently?
Who do you want to go first?
Can I start with Akin?
I look at a few things. I mean, obviously, we're kind of jumping between the UK and Nigeria in this conversation. I look at Nigerians in the UK who are gifted and talented in driving cabs. Yeah. I look at Nigerians who, when they see the sun and they can't pronounce it, they put the CD in the bin. I look at when they perceive, I mean, my brother is a owner of his own oil company, but yet the racism that he experiences as the owner of an oil company is profound in terms of how the Chinese and the Canadians will perceive them, and like you know, an oil company was hard to kind of lift and shift. I mean, it's hard to do 419 with an oil company. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yet that perception, yeah, of a world-leading business is still prevalent, and you know, it is so deep-rooted that, you know, whether we like it or not, yeah, whether you're in Nigeria and you're trying to do business in the UK or globally, etc., yeah, there is a perception of you're a fraudster, we can't trust you, etc. That runs deep in terms of the perceptions of who we are as a group of people, not the fact that we are brilliant, we are geniuses, we're smarter than, you know, most, in my opinion, we're smarter than most people, yeah, okay, we're biased, okay, but that's not the, yeah, and one of the things we have to do is what have we done as a group of people to address these imageries, to address this negativity about us, because if we don't change the narrative, they're not going to change the narrative.
Yeah, yeah. Entirely agree with that. And Mac, what's your take on how the very real issue of racism affects those of African descent, Nigerians or Black people in general, tangibly in the present day in the workplace? Yeah,
so as Akin pointed out, we're jumping a little bit from UK to Nigeria, and I will speak from a UK perspective primarily. I'll then touch on a Nigerian perspective, but from a UK perspective, we see the ways in which it's easier for white people to climb the corporate ladder. We see the way that there's a kind of an assumption of trust for white people, whereas there's an assumption of distrust for black people. So it's you have to prove that you're capable, and we hear these kind of mandates all the time about you have to work twice as hard to get half as much, and it's something that I learned, from a very young age, that I had to go and study a master's where my peers didn't. I had to go and do the extra work. I was working while studying, and just being super capable and not feeling that I had license to drop the ball. I spent 10 years in the energy sector, and I guess I was one of the privileged ones in that I managed to progress quite quickly. But when I looked at my peers, and as Akin said, that they're super qualified, super capable, but yet not in positions of authority. And then you look at those positions of authority and you see that actually the benchmark or the measurement for white males in particularly isn't the same measurement that is used for us. They don't necessarily have to have the qualifications and don't necessarily have to do the extra things that we have to do. And a lot of the privilege that carries isn't spoken about. I think there's doors that are opened. I worked in a big four consultancy firm for many years, and you very quickly see the nepotism that happens when you've been private school educated and you've been to Oxford and Cambridge and you can leverage the power of your parents' network, whereas we don't have those same networks. And speaking from a Nigerian perspective, I think a lot of the racism that we experience on a geopolitical or global stage has now been internalized. So when I walk into the airport in Nigeria as a black man, there is a perception that I carry with it. Although I was born here, although I have a British passport, if I was a white man walking into the airport, it would be a different perception, and I'd be treated differently to how I am, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it entirely does make sense. And I'm glad that you spoke about the way in which these ideologies are manifested globally. And it's quite ironic that you use the issue of the airport, because that is the transportation port to almost take us around the world. But as well as the ideology of racism being accepted, absorbed all around the world, and it's really anti-Black racism that we are talking about. Do you think that there is also a case of us as African descendants, us as Black people, people from Nigeria, also internalizing and ourselves holding on to a sense of devalue as compared to our non-African descended peers? Is that something that you can see in the workplace? And I'll back that straight to Tolagbe. You're on mute. You're on mute at present. Sorry.
Yes, because I had a 4-year-old come in here to ask me a question, so I didn't want you to have to hear that. I think, there's such a power in nomenclature and terms that we use. And one of the interesting dichotomies that has been raised is how it speaks to mobility of talent and the freedom to move. So when a white man comes to Africa, he is an expat. He gets an allowance. His money is paid to him. It's remitted abroad, and he gets an envelope in cash every week to live off, because, it's a hardship thing. There are all these structural support systems for his expat living. And then when a more talented, more qualified Black-skinned African professional is trying to break into another, going the other way around, you're an immigrant, and you'll always be an immigrant, and you have to jump through hoops to prove yourself, especially if your qualifications are from, another country. So the fundamental inequity, and I don't want to take it back to history anymore, but I want to say that, just when we think about mobility, it's ever so clear right now. The Americans are completely in a panic because they can't just show up anywhere visa-free right now because there is a pandemic and their government has failed to control it. But you know, so there are all these maps going around about we can only go to 26 countries and every African is looking like, welcome to the normal, you know, that's the status
Welcome
quo,
to our
like,
world. Yeah.
where it's not about your money, it's not about your access to anything. It is you are defined by your geography. And when you look at it in mobility of talent, access to opportunities, it's never more marked. How brown people can't just get up and go to wherever for, you know, gap year. You will see that the brown people who are going on gap years have been able to get another passport. So they're operating in that dual, they're operating in the duality. That's why they have access to these opportunities. Without that, you don't have them.
Okay, so what is, just moving the conversation on slightly, because I think we understand how these ideals are, certain ideals are racialized against African descended people. So for example, to use a very big example, in fact, the issue of corruption. Corruption has been racialized to be something that foreigners do, when those of us who reside perhaps in the US, and for me, definitely in the UK, I see things every day from central government, which causes me to pause and think, if that were the case of something that had happened overseas, that would be labeled as corruption. So we have an example of a contract recently being given to Dominic Cummings, his friends of his, and that contract hadn't been put out to tender, and it's for close to £1 million in value. And if that had happened anywhere but the UK, people would be pointing fingers and say that is corruption. In fact, people here are pointing fingers and saying that that's what corruption looks like. But as we know that that some ideals then, negative connotations, can be racialized and have been racialized, what's the pushback against that? What do you see as business people, business owners, that can be the pushback by yourselves against that? And can I come to Matt first?
You're saying pushback in terms of unpicking the racialization of some of these stereotypes?
Yes, and what can, I suppose, business owners, business leaders do to effect some level of pushback?
Yeah, so I think it's a difficult one. You know, it's very multifaceted, and we can't necessarily pin it down to one thing. My observation is that whenever a Black person does anything, it's as a representative of the Black community. So if a Black person steals, all Black people are now thieves. If a Black person is corrupt, all Black people are now corrupt. And it's a privilege that isn't, or not a privilege, but it's, you know, white people aren't spoken as being a representative of the whole white community. So if a white man is a pedophile, it's just him. If a white man is a mass shooter, that's just him. It doesn't get spread out to the rest of the community in the same way it does as Black people. And I think for me, you know, I think it's a battle that I've had to fight, you know, throughout my professional career, in that as I said earlier, the working twice as hard to get half as much thing is something that we take on. We kind of adopt it into our personas, and for 10 or more years, I did work twice as hard. And I think it comes to a point where we have to start addressing the system. I think a lot of us try to outwork and show that we're not, you know, this, whatever that is, if it's corruption, if it's theft, if it's, you know, youth violence, we try and work hard and say, you know, I'm not one of them, I'm a good Black or a good Nigerian. Whereas we can never change other people's perceptions of us. You know, I think it's something, for me personally, I started growing my hair while I was in KPMG, and that was part of my fight against the whole being boxed into one category. You know, I was sick of seeing one mold of professional Black person. This is what a professional Black person looks like. This is what a professional white person looks like. where we don't have the same assumptions for white people. Boris Johnson refuses to comb his hair and goes on TV and utters absolute nonsense on a regular basis, but nobody looks at him and says, oh, all white people are bumbling fools. It's just not the same expectation that we have. So I think for me, it's about being bold and kind of stepping out of that mold and saying, look, take me for me. I can't speak for the rest of whether that's my culture or my heritage. I'm just me, and that's that.
Akin, is there anything that you can stand with in this particular topic? Just thinking about how one can effect a pushback, perhaps not on just an individual basis, but also on a business-wide basis.
I think it's about, one of the things, we understand the power of language. Yeah, it is phenomenal, and therefore, as a learning and development professional, one of the things I understand is this: if I can shape your language, I can shape your behavior. So one of the things I see is that when I'm delivering a program to senior leaders, once they start speaking my language, so if I influence their language, it starts to influence their behavior. And so therefore, we have to understand what is the language that we utilize, because even our language determines our behavior as well. Yeah, so I think there is a, in terms of the pushback, we begin with ourselves in terms of ensuring that we can, not necessarily do the twice as hard, etc. But actually, what are the standards that we adopt as individuals, as organizations? Okay. And I've been in the same place as Matt, because I say to my team is all black in the office, and I've said to them, I give you a hard time because we do not have the luxury of mediocrity. But now I have to challenge myself in terms of why should we work as hard? But one of the things we're doing now is really shaping the language that we use as an organization, the language that we use with other organizations. I have the opportunity to speak with a lot of senior leaders. So therefore, I am in a position where they trust me. And therefore, my language now is going to be very important in terms of how I influence their language and their perception and their understanding. And I think Mac and probably Fafe has been in the same place where actually you walk into a place and they're initially surprised and then they're, ooh, because they're ooh, and oh my God, they're really, really good. And actually what we do is that we open up opportunities and windows for actually, if these guys, what else are we missing out on, sort of thing. And so the reality is this: if we're keeping it real, we have to be vanguards, we have to be pioneers. Actually, we have to open doors that allow others to come through. But also, if we're going to keep it real, we have to make sure that when you come through, you better not mess up, because you can't come with foolishness, especially in the business world. We can't afford to come with foolishness. And some people may not like that, but it's a reality where actually, when you work so hard, this is a struggle. And in a struggle, you cannot afford for foot soldiers to let you down.
I accept exactly what you're saying. I'm just going to throw something in just to perhaps shake it up a bit. Have yourself, Akin and Matt, not just made the argument for racial equality, but you appear to have put the onus on effecting that on the behavior of non-white people. So it's up to, it almost sounds as though you're saying it's up to us to be, the good Black, the good African, whereas it may be that it's very difficult on that individualized basis to really break down what we understand to be systemic anti-Blackness.
Yeah. Can I come in there? Because I think I agree in part to what Akin was saying. I disagree in part also, in that I'm at a position now, and it's taken me, the best part of 15 years to get to this position where I'm secure enough in myself to say, I have license to make mistakes. I don't necessarily feel the weight of the Black community, but what I do from a professional perspective is address the systemic, because it's the systemic that is working against us. It's the unspoken policies and procedures, or sometimes spoken policies and procedures, that actively work against us. I in myself am good. aware that I'm a capable person. So when I'm going in, similar to Akin, when I'm going in to give presentations and speak and lead workshops, I know that I'm capable, but I can't change somebody's response to me as a Black person. You know, so when I walk into buildings and professional settings, people look at me with my dreadlocks and I don't wear suits anymore. I refuse to wear suits. They look at me and I'm not in a suit, and their assumption is automatically I must be a cleaner, or I must be. I remember I was speaking on a panel and somebody that was also on the panel asked me, you know, where he can get his mic from, and assumed that I was the audio technician. And I had to explain, actually, no, I'm here similar to you as a speaker. And it's these perceptions that I have no control over that. What I do have control over is myself and the work that I do. So the work that I do seeks to unpick the systemic. And I think for me, again, you asked whether we're putting the onus on ourselves. And some of it does fall on us, because we have to be vocal in challenging when we see injustices and inequalities. We can't necessarily change it, but we can be mindful of what we accept. So in the workplace, you know, I'm in a privileged position now in that I work for myself. In the workplace, if I was somebody's employee, I'm not putting up with stuff that I put up with at the beginning of my career. You know, if you treat me a certain way, I'm speaking up about it first and foremost. And then if that doesn't work, I'm out the door, because I've grown that level of confidence to say, actually, treat me well or don't deal with me.
Yeah. I'm actually enthused that you brought in the word challenge, because if you know my spirit, that's exactly you know, where I was heading to. There is the individualized response that we can have of, you know, ensuring that our work is excellent and, you know, our work ethic is excellent, but there also has to be the real challenge towards the systemic, as you pointed out, that the procedures, the things that can actively work against us. Tolagbe, do you have any comments really on this area of discussion, and also on the idea of there is a business case for racial equality in workplaces and in businesses?
So, I mean, I'll start with totally aligning with Mac, but also understanding where Akin is coming from. Because you see, there's something I keep saying a lot right now, and it's, you know, when you break generations down, I say that Generation X, which, you know, millennials, and then, you know, Gen Z, I think we tried it their way, for want of a better word. We tried to be the best one, the good one, to hold the door open, to ask politely, to remind everybody. Absolutely. You know, so, I mean, guys, we tried it and it hasn't had the, you know, it had, everyone thought, you know, the little drops of water would eventually, you remember all those things, it's not working. So, you know what, like, here's the thing. I think this is one of those things that we have to watch, the way that millennials and Gen Z are navigating this space. They're speaking up. It is it is beautiful to watch. You know, they don't care about your feelings. They want to tell you how it is and how it's going to be. And I think most of all, there must be a freedom to be mediocre. Like, you know, like, that's my campaign. I just want to be able to be ordinary. I don't want to have to be the best. I don't want to be carrying the weight of trying to prove that no, let me just be ordinary. Let me just be average Joanna or average Tolagbe. That's where we're trying to get to. We're trying to normalize this thing. You know, let's look at, do you remember, I mean, Akin can probably speak to this, Mac, like, you know, those key rings and mugs where you'd go to a gift store and there'd be all the names. So there'd be Amy, Allison, and then, you know, and I could never find Tolagbe, and certainly could never find Tolagbe. I just want to be able to go into a store and find Tola. You know, that's what we're saying, guys. That's all we're saying. And which speaks to the business case issue, right? How can you, I mean, we all see it now. When you see an advert or you see an op-ed or you see an editorial and it's so tone deaf. And the first thing, what's the first thing everyone says? There were no Black people in the room.
Yeah.
First of all, this burden that we've carried has taught us to code switch. So our ability to code switch is why we are so gifted and fluent and we speak all the language. That's why it's that ability, you know, you're constantly moving from outside voice to inside voice. I mean, there are all these memes about people sounding one way to their friends, another way. So the immigrant experience, you sound one way to your parents, you sound one way to your fellow immigrant friends, then you sound one way in the workplace, you know? And then sometimes you have another thing for all the Black people who aren't necessarily Nigerian, right? So you're carrying all these different vocabularies, personas. You are a superstar, but you also have the right not to be necessarily. And I think that is so, so, so important. So that's what makes us so literal from the business case. That's why we're such savvy consumers. And as our buying power is catching up with it, we're pursuing the brands that speak to what we want to speak to. Rihanna is not African, but she's, you know, she's from the Caribbean islands. Yes. And you're watching her navigate that space. It is the same challenge of being all those people that is arguably one of the biggest reasons for her success, you know, because she is managing all that. So speaking to the business case, you are the ideal customer because you are all those people. But you know,
the ideal customer, the ideal employee, the ideal leader, because I think you've really identified something that is so important and almost so overlooked. When I speak to people who, in my communication coaching, who feel that one side of them can't go into certain professional environments, I ask them to embrace the fact that that difference that they may think that they have from the professional environment that they want to enter is quite soon going to become their advantage. And I think that you're absolutely right that also works in the ways of us being clients and consumers. There is that broad scope of our personalities, of our abilities, of our interactions that make us, in fact, as you said, savvy consumers, but also excellent, in my view, professionals. So just moving and nudging the conversation on finally, with that in mind, with the knowledge that, in fact, it is those, the racialized experiences that we have that have in turn taught us to be, you know, individuals who can wear many hats, many faces, many personalities. What then would you say, why is Nigeria and Nigerians, why are they important to the quest for racial equality, to the Black race, or indeed to the workplace? So whichever way you choose to come at it. Akin, you look as though you're squaring up to dive straight in, so I'm going to come to you.
I've always said it is really, really simple. When Nigeria wakes up, yeah, the Black world wakes up. It's as simple as that. Nigeria is the sleeping giant. Nigeria is the one which I believe that the world actually fears, and I mean fear because the people who have connected, who understand Nigeria, understand the potent talent, the enthusiasm, the talent that lies within this country. And actually, if we truly understand who we are, if we truly galvanize that, yeah, the impact that we will have globally, yeah, okay, on the diaspora, is phenomenal. Yeah. I mean, the reality is this: by 2050, Nigeria will be the third most populated country in the world. Yeah. And the question is this, yeah, are we going to be phenomenal, world-leading, amazing, comfortable in our skins, or are we going to continue bouncing along at the bottom? So we've got to recognize, and therefore we have to really, this is a pivotal time in history. The fact that it was George Floyd that has kind of sparked this, yeah, in America, we need to understand that this is pivotal to us as a people in Nigeria, in terms of there's an opportunity that if we seize it, we can change history.
Absolutely. Mac, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, so you mentioned kind of the business case for diversity. I'll touch on that first and then go on to the Nigerian situation. In terms of the business case for diversity, I think we need to get to a position as people that we're really making that business case or the implications of that business case come to the fore. My observation is that even though there are hostile environments, even though there are companies that have demonstrated their anti-Black racism and their disdain for us as a community, we continue to consume, we continue to be employees, we continue to service them. We need to get to a position as individuals where we can walk away, and that really brings home the implications to these organizations or individuals that actually anti-Black racism is going to hit your pocket. So that's one challenge. And in terms of the Nigeria situation, my observation is that for so long, Nigeria has been stuck in this middle ground of not necessarily fully embracing our traditional and cultural heritage and not fitting in kind of the geopolitical sense, in that aligning with the Western way of doing things. A democratic system was imposed on us. With the imposition of an identity, which is probably secondary to a Western identity, in that we are emulating the West in the way that we do things, the way that we do business, and the infrastructure that we have. A lot of it is a legacy of colonial times. I think the challenge for us is really identifying and owning our own identity. We need to be bold. We need to step out. We need to, and I don't mean this in the activist sense, but to some extent, we need to close our borders. We need to concentrate on us. I think for so long we've wanted to go to the West and go to the UK and the US and prove how good we are, good in inverted commas, in the Western sense of it. I think we need to take a step back and actually assess, what does good look like for Nigeria? What does the development of our economy look like? What does the development of our political systems look like? And again, bringing in the racial diversity element to say, actually, we are a culture of 200 plus identities in terms of tribal heritage and background and cultures. What does it look like for us to coexist? What does unity look like for the people of Nigeria? Focused on developing Nigerian talent, as Akin said, there's a huge potential there. We have young people that are itching to be given opportunities, that itching to be given a stable political environment within which they can thrive. And the innovation that comes from that, in terms of kind of social mobility and social enterprise, could be huge, could be transformational. And speak to Akin's point again about us being the third most populous country on the earth, the biggest crime for us would be not to develop in accordance with that. We look at China and the leaps and bounds that they've come on in the last 30 to 40 years. It takes a certain amount of determination. It takes a certain willingness to be demonized by the West. And when we look at history tells us that the kind of pseudo Cold War between the US and China was harsh from a Western perspective, but for China it was great, because they got the detachment that was needed to develop who they were, to develop their identity, to develop the roadmap for the next 30, 40, 50 years. And now when you look at China is streets ahead of the USA, streets ahead. So I think we need to get to that same situation.
Thank you so much. So Lagbe, instead of answering that question, I'm going to take one of the questions that's come into the chat. How do we manage racism that happens right here in Nigeria? Tayo Ajayi asks. As Nigerians, we choose organizations who have expatriates on their boards to handle a service rather than a wholly Nigerian-owned company. So how does one seek to counteract that, which may be seen as an internalized form of taking on board racism and accepting some of the racist tropes that are held about ourselves?
Cheryl, you've answered the question by either you asked yourself, but I mean, it is a conscious effort. Funnily enough, there's some legislation that speaks to this. There have been a number of there's the Cabotage Act. So for example, in the marine world, and even within the oil and gas, which obviously is one of the most significant sectors here, there are specific, so there's effectively, there are quota systems that speak to certain categories of work being given to wholly indigenous companies. I don't know if that resolves the corruption issue. In fact, I would argue that it doesn't at all. But I know that with a combination of legislation, so it speaks, you have to address it systemically.
Right.
As the talent pool continues to grow, as Nigerians continue to expand their horizons and become qualified for such work. And we're seeing that happen definitely in some spaces. So you're seeing it in the fintech space for sure. There were a crop of companies that came from Europe and did a sort of identikit model across Africa. And frankly, we're here 5-7 years later, they've all gone because the system didn't work. So there is definitely a need to speak to that. But I would also say that we continue to expand what it means to be Nigerian. I don't believe that it may necessarily be productive to do the same thing again and define a Nigerian as someone who happens to be African or black-skinned. We are very much realizing that there are third, sometimes even fourth generation Nigerians now who happen to be of Syrian descent or Lebanese descent or Indian descent. And frankly, I don't see that they should necessarily be excluded from these opportunities either. And we're seeing a lot of that kind of talent and those kind of companies come up as well. But they make their money here, they spend their money here, they invest their money here. So, if we said they weren't Nigerian, then we'd be doing exactly the same thing that we're accusing everyone else of doing. So I think to address Tayo's question, because I don't think I've answered it, is we must expand what it means to be a Nigerian or what it means to be committed. We are still in a position where we require foreign investments. And if foreign investors need to see certain key indicators, let's not be naive about that. Especially for processes or safety or procedure, or even things like legislation. Again, you have the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which legislates about how PR or bribes or can be paid. And so what that means is citizens or people on the board who are representing those interests are actually supposed to improve the moral tone and fiber of the organization. So, let's accept that we are in a globalized world. Let's support the Nigerians who are trying to improve the ecosystem as a whole. And then you'll find that naturally a balance will emerge.
Okay, thank you so much, Lagre. Just rounding up, because we are out of time then, I'm grateful to all of the speakers who have lent their ideas, their minds, and their words to this particular topic. I think some of the takeaways that we can have is that as Nigerians, we are gifted and talented. It's only for us as a nation to wake up, and we can really affect change, which will be a racial change because of the strength that we have in this global universe. So once again, thank you so much, Mac. Thank you so much, Akin. Thank you so much, Talagbe. To everybody who sat in on the talk, I hope you found it useful. You can obviously find myself and all the other esteemed speakers on the HREA platform that I hope that you've signed up for. But many thanks from me and goodbye.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. we're about to start the next session. Mr. Adeyinka Shoneka, I'm going to make you a co-host. Do you want me to, you want to share your screen, correct?
Yes, good morning, Erefa. Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Let me just share my screen. Hi, Erefa. So can I carry on? Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody to this session, and I'd like to thank the organizers of the HREA Festival for giving us the opportunity to come and speak about our document management solution to the wider audience. Well, let me first of all introduce myself. My name is Adeyinka Shoneka. I head business development at the Central Securities Clearance System, which is a financial market infrastructure and central securities depository for the capital market in Nigeria. We have been in existence for over 23 years, providing services to capital market operators and to the investment public as a whole. And it's a major point to note that we were also the ones that championed the full dematerialization of share certificates in the capital market from 2016 to date, and which also has given us credence and part of our expertise in document management services. So my presentation of this class is mainly about how to make effective the running of human resources departments along various organizations. And it does not also, this product or this service is not only limited to HR services. It runs across all spectrums of various organizations. So this table of content will follow through mainly how important EDMS now is during this present situation we find ourselves in state of this COVID-19 pandemic. We'll talk about CSCS. We'll reflect on on the needs of EDMS, our value proposition. We'll go into some details about the process flow that we go through in executing this document management service, the software we use, and also then I'll conclude and then show you some of the people that we have worked with. So as we all know, the COVID-19 global pandemic has radically changed the way businesses conduct themselves around the world. It has affected not only Nigerian business, but business around the world. It has also affected not only private companies, government, schools, public companies. Everybody is fully affected with the way, with this pandemic. And it has necessitated everybody activating their business continuity plan and strategies. And this phase, it has also necessitated a full digitalization of the workplace environment. So a digital workplace that functions effectively with a standard BCP strategy starts from the use of digital tools by employees in performing tasks right through to the process and documents that they work with. The best way to choose the right solution for a digital workplace will begin by answering three basic questions. What information will the employees need to do their work and their jobs effectively? Where this information is currently stored, and can employees access this storage remotely and securely? I've spoken about the CSCS and our achievement in the full dematerialization of all share certificates in the capital market. And also we are certification by Thomas Murray, which makes us ISO compliant. So in terms of corporate reflection, I mean, people that really need this solution are people that, you know, have to answer, have one or two of these issues that they are facing now. An office that is currently buried with under a mountain of paper, where they don't have easy accessibility to the documents that they require to do their everyday work, where it takes time to retrieve information, where they have people clustered in different areas and can easily get lost. And then even when they now face a disaster like fire or flood, they don't have access to the information that they had in physical format. The role of HR in building competitive organization. And we know that HR is very, very important in building an organization as it explores ways to free human resource to achieve its strategic mission. And it makes a business more competitive. And the HR goes to various documents that are very important in running an organization, like the employee screening and selection, for instance, where you would go take people's resumes and applications, you have their interview records, their pre-employment testing, verification and reference checks, the onboarding processes, where you have to comply with government documents, benefit documents, emergency notification documents, the talent management when they join the organization, the various trainings that are required, promotions, performance management information, and even exit interviews when they're leaving. And then on a day-to-day, month-to-month information that is required, like for wages and salary, for increase or decrease in wages, formal discipline, job-related medical records, and then other records in terms of litigation documents. So these documents are very, very important for the HR department. And this is where our EDMS comes in, because most HR processes that exist presently are manual and use a lot of paper documents. These files originate in electronic form most of the time, but many are still printed, signed, copied, mailed, and stored in different filing cabinets in multiple locations, especially in big organizations that have branches. Over time, this distributed and sometimes inconsistent process can lead to poor reporting, inadequate audit capabilities, weak security controls, and high storage costs. HR has 3 tools for creating a fast, efficient, and secure HR document management. Streamline and update processes, use technology to automate document management, or to outsource or outtask this document management work, which is not the core function of the HR department. Over time, we've seen various issues that have come up in HR related issues, like growing volumes of paper that are mentioned in terms of pre-employment or employment documentation, the manual processes to copy, email, mail, and file this document, inconsistent document processes across different locations, lack of reporting of audit capability for more complicated internal and external requests. The impact of all these issues are the response time is slow, and then there's inability sometimes to access employees' files, high labor costs, missing HR files, duplication of effort, cannot verify document retention, delays in processing paperwork, risk of fines for non-compliance, especially when it comes to tax issues, high storage and shipping costs, privacy and security concerns. So what must HR managers do? Create fast and easy access to documents, ensure document security backup, reduce storage and shipping costs, improve reporting and audit capabilities, increase productivity, optimize use of HR staff. These issues are significant not only on a day-to-day basis, but their impact can also be felt during a crisis or during trigger events like mergers and acquisition, or when you are moving facilities from one office to the other, or during lawsuits and audits. So our document management process, as I said, is an end-to-end process that moves documents from physical form into e-format. And this goes through typically 3 major steps of physically archiving on-site and off-site warehousing of the documents, the process of digitalizing the physical document, and then the transformation into electronic format. The benefit of this EDMS, one, it will provide controlled access to documents while providing audit trails, so it improves your document security. Manage storage of documents in a way that facilitates convenient retrieval of a document when needed, so it gives you easier access to these documents. Better collaboration and workflow from the information sharing and collaboration is easier with a DMS. It provides greater visibility to business processes and allows for better workflow monitoring. And then also it reduces your storage space for documents, because you now have multiple duplication of documents in different areas. You have a central storage space. Our value proposition for our EDMS is that it makes you regulatory compliant. And our DMS also includes a data backup and disaster recovery plan, which is very important during this period. It grants your employees the ability to seamlessly and conveniently search for files and access them remotely anywhere, anytime. And then it eliminates having your workplace split with stacks of papers by converting your documents into digital form, accessible via either your mobile or any other of your mobile devices. So in part of our experience, this is a typical process that we have gone through. This is where one of our sites that we have worked on. The paper document is where we started from, and what we had to go through in sorting this out. And then the stacked mobile racks are where we ended up at when we finished the project. As I mentioned, this procedure takes 3 major stages. The preparation and classification of the documents. So we'll go through a preparation phase for you, where we'll sort out all the documents, we'll put them according to the specified and agreed arrangement that both parties agreed on. Then we'll go through the scanning and quality control of what we have scanned, and then we will now transport them into e-format, into soft copies, and an agreed indexed format for the organization. Our EDMS also uses M files to create workflows. And this workflow is also what ensures that you can retrieve the files easily. And our M files is a very robust application. It has various user authorizations. It creates workflow management for you. It's a powerful search engine. It gives you easy access to all your files, and you can store it either in the cloud or in physical format. And it can easily be integrated with any of your other systems and applications. These are some other high-level features of the M files, which it can also offer. And this as well. So in terms of execution, we have also a well-defined execution plan in execution our EDMS. We'll go through a point where if we are appointed, we go to an evaluation and scoping of the documents that you have. We go through the commercials aspect of it. We go through also agreeing on the contract terms, and then we'll now implement a project team that will implement the execution of the plan. Overall, we are confident that our DMS will be useful to most institutions in boosting efficiency in operation, increasing process transparency, and building a legacy system that will benefit the organization and its employees. We'll be delighted if you consider us a long-term partner to the development of your organization. These are some of the companies that we have done EDMS for. You can see they are both public and private companies, and also some states in Nigeria. So I'm available for any question, and also my team is also available for any question in the HREA forum all through the day. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shineka. Please let me know if you have any questions, but I do have a question. I'm looking at your clients base and they're very, obviously, they're industry leaders and big organizations. Have you got products for smaller businesses, you know, because we attract all sort of, so we might not have the top end organization or people, smaller organizations. Do you have a product?
Yes, so
product
we offer our services to everyone because it's it can be tailor-made.
Okay.
So it depends on what your requirements are.
Okay, so you can tailor-made to what
Yes.
we require. Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions before Mr. Shonekan leaves this platform? You can type your question in the chat if you don't want to ask a question by speaking. Okay, it looks like we have no questions. I'll check the back end. Bear with me, let me check the back end and see if there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Erefa.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. We will send any question or anything that we get across to the team. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.